First thing my brother said to my daughter after my father died was, "You know you can't keep that house, right?" Not hello. Not, "How are you holding up?" That. He said it in the church parking lot while people were still carrying foil trays back to their cars. Emma thought he was joking at first. She even smiled a little. Then she saw his face. Later that night, she called me from her apartment and said, "Mom, I think Uncle Darren's in some kind of trouble." She wasn't wrong. What neither of us knew yet was that he'd already printed the papers, already talked to a lawyer, already spent 3 days telling relatives my father had dementia and my daughter manipulated him into changing the will. And the worst part? Some of them believed him because it sounded possible. That's the thing about family. People don't need proof. They just need a version that lets them stay comfortable. My father died in March. Small town outside Asheville. Retired electrician, smoked too much, trusted too easily, never threw anything away. The garage still had extension cords from the 90s hanging on nails in little loops. He and Darren had always been loud together. Sports on TV, beer bottles on the porch rail, arguments that sounded serious until you realized neither of them actually cared what they were yelling about. Me and my father were quieter with each other. We talked while doing things, replacing cabinet hinges, driving somewhere, standing in line at Lowe's. After my divorce, Emma and I moved back for about 8 months, just long enough to get steady again. My father never mentioned the embarrassment of it. He cleared out the guest room, bought Emma one of those cheap standing lamps for studying, and acted like we were doing him a favor by being there. Emma stayed close to him after we moved out. She'd stop by after classes, bring groceries, reset passwords on his phone, argue with him about eating canned soup 4 nights in a row. I work in medical billing. Long hours. End of quarter is brutal. There were weeks I only saw my father on Sundays. Emma saw him almost every day. Nobody really thought about it at the time. Families settle into patterns quietly. Then one day those patterns become evidence. The will reading happened 9 days after the funeral. Darren came in late carrying a gas station coffee and acting irritated by the parking situation. His wife, Melissa, kept whispering at him to take his hat off. The lawyer read the document straight through. House to Emma. Savings split 70-30 between Emma and me. Darren got my father's truck and his fishing equipment. That was it. No dramatic pause, no speech from beyond the grave, just paperwork. Darren leaned back in his chair like he was trying not to laugh. Then he asked, "What year was this updated?" The lawyer checked. "August." Darren nodded slowly. Too slowly. "Right around when he started forgetting things." Nobody answered him. On the drive home, Emma stared out the window and picked at the skin around her thumb until it bled. "You think he's gonna fight it?" "Probably." "You think he can win?" "No." That should have made her feel better. It didn't. 3 days later, Darren started calling people. My aunt first, then cousins, then neighbors. People my father hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about cognitive decline and elder manipulation. One cousin messaged Emma asking if Grandpa had really understood what he was signing. That one made her cry. Not because she was hurt, because she was embarrassed. There's a specific kind of humiliation that comes from being looked at like a person who takes advantage of old people. Even when you know it's ridiculous, some part of you still wants to defend yourself. Which is exactly why Darren's version worked. He wasn't trying to prove anything legally yet. He was softening the room first. A week later, Emma called me during lunch. He came to campus. I left my food sitting there untouched. What do you mean, came to campus? He was outside the library. She sounded more confused than upset. That bothered me more. He kept saying we needed to handle things privately before lawyers got involved, like over and over. What did you say? Honestly, not much. He was acting weird. Then she paused. He asked if you'd already started renovating Grandpa's house. I closed my office door. We haven't even changed the mailbox yet. I know. That night I drove to my father's house to pick up some paperwork. Darren's truck was parked across the street. Not in the driveway. Across the street. Engine off. Just sitting there. I almost walked over. Didn't. I still don't know if that was restraint or cowardice. Inside, the house smelled stale, like dust and old coffee filters. Emma had stacked sympathy cards on the counter with a rubber band around them. I found 2 overdue utility notices under the microwave. Not my father's. Darren's. Different address. That was the first moment something clicked into place. Not greed exactly. Panic. There's a difference. Greedy people think forward. Panicked people grab sideways. 2 Saturdays later, Darren invited Emma to what he called a family conversation. At the house, 6 o'clock. Melissa texted separately afterward saying, "Please just hear him out. He's under a lot of stress." That message bothered me more than Darren's, because it sounded tired. Emma didn't want to go. I already know what this is. I know. So why should I? I looked at her for a second. Because people like your uncle get bolder when they think you're scared of awkwardness. She laughed once through her nose. You really know how to make things sound fun. Before she left, I told her one thing. If there's paperwork, don't argue. Don't explain yourself. Just say you need time. She nodded, but I could tell she was rehearsing the sentence in her head already. I parked half a block away in front of an empty rental property. The grass needed cutting. Someone had shoved pizza flyers into the screen door. Emma texted me after she went inside. There's a lawyer here. Of course there was. I sat there watching moths bounce off a street lamp while rain started tapping lightly against the windshield. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then my phone buzzed again. He wants me to sign over the house temporarily until probate settles. Temporary. That word does a lot of work in families. I called her immediately. Put me on speaker. The room went quiet the second she did. I could hear Darren breathing. You brought your mother into this? He asked. I said, you brought paperwork into it first. Nobody spoke for a second. Then a man cleared his throat. Calm voice, practiced. Ma'am, this is simply a temporary transfer to protect the asset. Who are you? He gave his name. Local attorney. Mostly real estate stuff. Not probate. Interesting. I grabbed my keys. By the time I walked in, everybody looked exhausted already. Melissa was sitting at the kitchen table tearing a paper napkin into tiny squares without noticing she was doing it. Emma stood near the doorway, still wearing her backpack. Darren looked angry in the way men do when they expected momentum and got resistance instead. The paperwork was spread across the table beside a bowl of untouched potato salad. That detail still sticks with me for some reason. Potato salad sweating under plastic wrap while my brother tried to talk my daughter out of her inheritance. Human beings are ridiculous. You seriously called Mom? Darren asked Emma. She called me, I said. The lawyer started gathering papers into neat stacks. Always a bad sign when attorneys suddenly become organized. I picked up the document. It wasn't temporary at all. It transferred occupancy rights, financial control, maintenance authority. Basically everything except Emma's name on paper. I looked at Darren. You thought she wouldn't read this? He rubbed both hands over his face. I'm trying to keep the property from getting screwed up. By who? She's 22. Emma finally spoke. So? So you don't know how expensive houses are. You don't even own your own house anymore. The rooms snapped toward her. Darren stared. Emma looked shocked she'd said it out loud. Melissa stopped tearing the napkin. That's when I knew it was true. Darren looked at her. Melissa looked down immediately. Nobody had planned for honesty to enter the conversation. It changed the air completely. Finally, Melissa said quietly, "The bank started foreclosure in February." Darren slammed his palm against the table. Melissa! No, I'm serious. I'm done sitting here acting like this is about family fairness. He stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. You think you're helping? I think you scared a kid whose grandfather just died. Emma looked down at the floor after that. Not dramatic, not crying, just tired suddenly. The lawyer muttered something about stepping outside and left without waiting for an answer. Nobody tried stopping him. Rain hit the windows harder. Darren picked the chair up slowly and sat back down. His whole face looked older than it had 2 minutes earlier. I borrowed money from Dad, he said finally. Not to me, to the table. I was gonna pay it back. How much? I asked. No answer. Melissa said, too much. Then she got up and walked into the bathroom and shut the door. We could hear her crying almost immediately, which embarrassed everyone enough that nobody moved for a while. Darren stared at the potato salad. I didn't think he'd cut me out. There it was. Not rage. Not betrayal. Expectation. That was the real thing underneath all of it. He genuinely believed the house would save him because somewhere along the line he stopped separating love from access. Emma sat down finally and slipped her backpack off her shoulder. You could have just talked to us, she said. Darren gave this weird little shrug. Wouldn't have mattered. That's not true. You don't know what it feels like when bills stack up and you can't breathe every time the phone rings. Emma almost answered, then stopped herself. Good decision. Some conversations get worse the smarter you try to sound. We left about 20 minutes later. No threats, no speeches. Honestly, the saddest part was how ordinary everything looked by the end. Rain, dirty dishes, wet shoes by the door. A family falling apart in a room that smelled faintly like mustard and mildew. 2 weeks later, Darren signed paperwork acknowledging the debt to the estate. Not because he suddenly became noble, because the lawyer told him discovery would expose everything anyway. Melissa moved in with her sister that summer. Emma kept the house, but almost sold it twice. Said it felt strange sleeping somewhere everybody fought over. I understood that. Some places absorb tension. You can repaint walls and still feel conversations sitting inside them. Last month, Emma found one of my father's old jackets in the garage. Cigarettes in the pocket. Receipt from 2017. A tiny flashlight that didn't work anymore. She brought it inside and hung it by the laundry room door instead of packing it away. I didn't ask why. Some grief doesn't need interpretation.